Engage.
The Galaxy-class USS Enterprise D was destroyed in orbit of Veridian III in 2371 by the Duras sisters. Following a surprise attack, the star drive section was destroyed by a warp core breach, whilst the saucer section evacuated most of the crew but crashed on the planet Veridian III during the events of the film Star Trek Generations. But you already knew that. You know it, you've seen it. It's stated that due to Prime Directive concerns, the saucer was retrieved by Starfleet. Veridian IV was a Class M planet with a population of 230 million people at a pre-industrial stage of development. So, I guess there'd be no rush to get that saucer back, right? What if there was more going on than just the worry that some pre-warp civilization might find a crashed flying saucer in a few hundred years? Let's speculate. What if someone else wanted the broken saucer of the Enterprise? The newly refitted Enterprise that would be up to cutting-edge technology, post-Wolf 359, emerging Dominion threat standards? Who would want the broken hull of the Enterprise?
You see, Picard, after we dissect your Enterprise for every precious bit of information, I intend to display its broken hull in the center of the Romulan capital as a symbol of our victory. It will inspire our armies for generations to come.
Whilst Romulans swooping in on Veridian III to salvage the wreck of a Galaxy-class starship seems unlikely, let's keep in mind that they've been trying to scavenge Federation wreckage of starships for years by this point. Dialogue from Sela, and even her mere existence, makes me believe that the Enterprise C was perhaps captured in part. Maybe there was only enough wreckage there to be put into a few small cardboard boxes, but at least some elements of the Enterprise C may have been captured by the Romulans, as well as items that were on board the ship. Examples of various types of Federation technology at the time. The year before the destruction of the Enterprise, the wreckage of the USS Pegasus was of great interest to the Romulans. And a few years later, the Romulans would even get their hands on the USS Prometheus. This ship would find itself briefly under Romulan control to be brought back to the Tal Shiar for study. So the acquisition of Federation technology seems to be something that the Romulans are greatly interested in. The Veridian system would seem to be near to Romulan space, with the Amegosa Observatory being attacked by Romulans.
Romulans.
We found 2 dead Romulans on the station.
This could signify a new Romulan threat in this sector.
Trilithium had been stolen from the Romulans and brought to the Amegosa Observatory, where Dr. Soren was working on a weapon to destroy stars with. That sort of stuff might be useful for collapsing wormholes. Destroying star systems where the founders of the Dominion dwell? The events of Generations take place during the events of Season 3 of DS9, with the star date for Generations being 48632.4, these events taking place after the discovery of the Cardassian Obsidian Order fleet during the events of DS9 episode Defiant, which took place on stardate 48467.3. I can find a stardate for the DS9 episode Destiny that takes place on 48543.2, Visionary, where we see an alternate future where the wormhole is destroyed. Takes place after that, with Improbable Cause and the Die is Cast then taking place after that. And then the next episode I have a stardate for is the episode The Adversary, which takes place on 48959.1. So around about that time, the joint fleets of the Tal Shiar and the Obsidian Order went through the wormhole to attack the Founders. It looks like the Romulans were looking into trilithium weaponry. Definitely something that for them at this stage might be handy for the attack on the Founders, or maybe useful to close the Bajoran wormhole permanently. However, these plans seeming to be thwarted might be due to the various forces at work within the Romulan Empire to thwart such plans against the Dominion.
Why are you doing this?
Because no changeling has ever harmed another.
Wow, that was quite a tangent from let's not leave that saucer there in case the Romulans nick it, innit?
Please, Spock, do me a favor. And don't say it's fascinating. No. But it is interesting.
Okay.
If there's one thing I've learned from Captain Picard, it's that I am Captain Picard. Energize.
Throughout sci-fi, we have seen many a seemingly undefeatable force of automatons, capable of a high level of malicious and malevolent destruction. The Daleks, the Kalon, the Cylons. But in Star Trek, we have the Borg.
In their collective state, the Borg are utterly without mercy, driven by one will alone, the will to conquer. They are beyond redemption, beyond reason.
The Borg are firing! We're gonna die!
It is my opinion that the Borg are as close to pure evil as any race we've ever encountered. All attempts to negotiate with them have failed.
We will add your biological and technological distinctiveness to our own. Resistance is futile.
Following a build-up mystery-style introduction in Star Trek The Next Generation Season 1 episode The Neutral Zone, the Borg would be introduced in Season 2 episode Q Who. They would go on to be a seemingly unstoppable force in Q Who, with the Enterprise outmatched at every turn, and during their next appearance in Star Trek The Next Generation episode Best of Both Worlds, the defeat of the Borg is essentially a lucky fluke occurrence of the right personnel in the right places at the right times.
Fate protects fools, little children, and ships named Enterprise.
After this, in The Next Generation, the Borg were used very sparingly. We can't have the ultimate villain who were defeated by a technicality showing up every week. And then Voyager happened and decided that all the cool stuff left over from the Borg's big screen outing in First Contact had to be used up, resulting in the Borg being overused, reduced to a childish, moustache-twirling bad guy who had fallen victim to villain decay.
If the Continuums told you once, they've told you 1,000 times.
Don't provoke the Borg!
Doctor! Computer, activate the ECH.
Acknowledged.
Let's imagine we were back in 1989, and no other Borg episodes existed as of yet. Let's use that Krenim weapon ship and delete all of the time that happened since then.
What we do here is go back.
Welcome aboard, Captain.
Temporal incursion is complete.
I've taken us back to the episode The Neutral Zone. This episode sets the stage for the introduction to the Borg. Following a briefing at Starbase 718, Picard's orders are to take the Enterprise into the Neutral Zone to investigate the destruction of Federation starbases and outposts.
2 Federation outposts in Sector 30 have been destroyed. There's been no communication with Federation starbases in Sector 31 since stardate 41903.2.
Romulans.
That's the assumption.
Upon arrival, the Enterprise finds that the Federation installations along the Neutral Zone have been scooped from the area, carried off.
The outpost was not just destroyed. It's as though some great force just scooped it off the face of the planet.
Could it have been natural phenomena?
Insufficient information, sir.
Following a tense standoff with a cloaked Romulan warship, the Romulans reveal themselves and open communications with the Enterprise. It is discovered that Romulan outposts along the other side of the Neutral Zone have been attacked in a similar manner, and that the Federation and the Romulans may have a new, superior adversary plotting against them.
We are here because our outposts, which border on the Neutral Zone, were also attacked.
Destroyed in the exact same manner as your own.
Do you think that we attacked your outposts?
Once we realized the level of destruction, we knew it it could not have been you.
Who is responsible?
We do not know who is responsible. Why entire outposts on both sides have been carried off.
There was an intent here. Whoever or whatever did this is more powerful than either of us.
I won't spoil you as to who that adversary may be yet. Let's move on to the events of Q-Who, which start when Geordie's new ensign throws her hot chocolate all over Captain Jean-Luc Picard.
Oh, no! Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, Captain.
Sacked in the morning, sacked in the morning. Fortunately for Picard, godlike entity Q is ready to clean the captain's uniform.
There, haven't we been careless? A little cleaning service I'm only too happy to provide.
Unfortunately for Picard, Q has abducted the captain and taken a Starfleet shuttle to a remote position that would take it years to return to Federation space. Picard agrees to listen to what Q has to say, and Q stops bouncing his ball and returns him to the Enterprise.
If I return you to your ship, will you agree to give my request a full hearing? You're right, Picard. This is the proper venue for our discussion.
After a brief standoff with Guinan, Q informs Picard that he has been asked to leave the Q Continuum. He offers to join the crew of the Enterprise. Ever since the pilot episode Encounter at Farpoint, Q has felt that humanity is moving further and faster than they should be, even alluding at one point that he felt that humanity would one day outpace the Q Continuum.
Thou art notified that thy kind have infiltrated the galaxy too far already. Thou art directed to return to thine own solar system immediately. Go back whence thou camest, or thou shalt most certainly die.
We're growing. Something about us compels us to learn, explore.
Yes, the human compulsion. And unfortunately for us, it is a power which will grow stronger century after century, eon after eon.
Eons. Have you any idea how far we'll advance?
Perhaps in a future that you cannot yet conceive, even beyond us.
Picard feels that Q is too chaotic to join the crew of the Enterprise, and in a fit of irritation at being rejected by Picard, Q hurls the Enterprise across several sectors to a location almost 3 years away from Federation space, so that the Enterprise can witness a preview of things to come, to see what awaits them. Guinan, having been in this area of space before, warns Picard that the best and most prudent course of action is to start on a course back home immediately. The mandate of Starfleet and the mission statement of the USS Enterprise is to seek out new life and new civilizations, and boldly go where no one has gone before. Picard considers Guinan's warning, but chooses to explore the area. They are within the vicinity of a system that Federation astronomers have named J25, and the Enterprise's scans find planets that have identical devastation as the outposts along the neutral zone had. Suddenly, the Enterprise finds itself being scanned by a bizarrely unnatural cube-shaped vessel that was hanging in space in the same way that bricks don't. Picard asks Guinan for her take on the ship. She informs him it belongs to the Borg. She advises Picard to protect the ship or the Borg will destroy them. Riker orders shields up. However, the Borg are able to beam through the shields in the same way that a YouTube mukbanger would go through $100 of McDonald's food. A single Borg infiltrates the engineering section, showing a great deal of interest in the technology of the Enterprise. The Borg attempts to access the ship's systems, however, it took a phaser on a high setting to incapacitate it. After being gunned down, a second Borg takes its place and continues to access the Enterprise's systems, a protective shield preventing it from being harmed by phaser fire. Upon accomplishing whatever it set out to do, it removes several components from its downed comrade and leaves. Picard calls his officers to a conference with Guinan invited. She informs the senior staff that the Borg swarmed through her people's system. When they left, there was little or nothing left of her people. The Borg hail the Enterprise and give a brief warning.
This is Captain Jean-Luc Picard of the U.S.
We have analyzed your defensive capabilities as being unable to withstand us. If you defend yourselves, you will be punished.
And then they attempt to seize the Enterprise with a tractor beam, and then they use a cutting beam to surgically dissect a part of the Enterprise's hull. The Enterprise, returning fire, manages to deal a significant blow to the Borg, causing them to become inert. At an after-action conference, Guinan informs the senior staff that the Borg are comprised of artificial and organic life that has been evolving for thousands of centuries. Q chimes in and states that the Borg are uninterested in political power, conquest and wealth, but they are interested in the Enterprise as a ship, identifying it as something that they can consume. Picard agrees to Riker's suggestion that they send an away team to the Borg ship to gather as much information from the seemingly incapacitated, disabled ship as possible. They find the Borg have survived, however. The Borg crew ignore the away team, much like humans ignore insects, seeing them as not being a threat to them. The away team goes on to find a Borg nursery, the Borg seemingly being born as a biological life form, which then have implants installed within them, linking artificial intelligence directly into their humanoid brain. Mr. Data suddenly interrupts the investigation upon finding that the Borg appear to be concentrating their efforts on regenerating and repairing their vessel. Picard has them beamed aboard, and he elects to boldly get the Enterprise the hell out of there at maximum warp.
Captain, the Borg seem to be using their combined power to repair the ship.
Transporter Chief, beam the away team directly to the bridge. Let's get the hell out of here. Warp 8. Now, Mr. Crusher, engage.
Even at what would be considered to be a vast energy expenditure, the Borg cube is able to pursue the Enterprise at high warp while still regenerating its damaged systems. The Enterprise is unable to slow or damage the Borg ship with photon torpedoes, and the Borg use their weapons to disable the Enterprise's engines and shields to a position where Picard is prepared to risk the destruction of the Enterprise by firing torpedoes at the Borg ship. Q, having had enough fun, is ready to leave the Enterprise to their fate. However, Picard admits to defeat.
I'll be leaving now. You thought you could handle it. So handle it.
Q, end this.
What makes you think I'm either inclined or capable to terminate this encounter?
You wanted to frighten us. We're frightened. You wanted to show us that we were inadequate. For the moment. I grant that. You wanted me to say, I need you. I need you!
An admission that impresses Q, who returns the Enterprise to Federation space.
That was a difficult admission. Another man would have been humiliated to say those words. Another man would have rather died than asked for help.
I understand what you've done here, Q. But I think the lesson could have been learned without the loss of 18 members of my crew.
Your species is always suffering and dying.
Guinan and Picard discuss the Borg over a game of chess, with Picard admitting that perhaps the Federation has been too comfortable and needed a kick in their complacency.
You're not prepared for what awaits you.
How can we be prepared for that which we do not know? But I do know that we are ready to encounter it.
Picard, you are about to move into areas of the galaxy containing wonders more incredible than you can possibly imagine, and terrors to freeze your soul.
I believe that the original appearance of the Borg and Q, who showed them in their best light, more in a terror of space, what is hiding in the dark forests out there sort of idea.
Con permiso, Capitán. The hall is rented, the orchestra engaged. It's now time to see if you can dance.
They're not just another political or military enemy, but one that views the Federation as just simply raw material, spare parts. The horror of this episode was more cerebral, brought through dialogue.
They will follow the ship until you exhaust your fuel. They will wear down your defenses. Then you will be there. Admit it, Picard, you're out of your league. You should have stayed where you belong.
Rather than visceral gore.
You can't outrun them. You can't destroy them. If you damage them, the essence of what they are remains. They regenerate and keep coming. Eventually, you will weaken. Your reserves will be gone. They are relentless.
The Borg didn't seem to want to kill. Rather, if we put everything that followed to one side, these Borg seemed to want the Enterprise to consume it, dismantle it from under the crew's feet. A fate worse than death. They'd leave Picard's crew deserted in a position where their biggest enemy would be the lack of food and lack of oxygen. On first viewing, I imagined these Borg as pirates, raiders, one ship that moved from place to place, through the neutral zone to System J25. I find it quite odd in dialogue that Guinan mentioned that the Borg would now be aware of the Federation's existence, considering the events of the episode The Neutral Zone, where they had been in the neutral zone, scooping up planets and outposts and starbases.
Oh, and lest I forget, without Q, the Borg would have assimilated the Federation. Thank you.
This Borg ship, being something that grew over time, replaced its parts like a ship of Theseus, or for the British amongst you, like Trigger's broom.
I've maintained it for 20 years. This old broom has had 17 new heads and 14 new handles in its time.
Adding technology to itself, part car boot sale, part museum, part junkyard, they simply loot what they want or need and leave, treating their bodies in the same way, replacing organic parts with mechanical ones as they wear out. However, as the show would go on, they took the Borg in another direction, giving them an almost religious sort of seeking perfection ideal, a race that would assimilate and consume entire civilizations. And the next generation used them sparingly. They had a respect for their ultimate villain.
If you can't take a little bloody nose, maybe you ought to go back home and crawl under your bed. It's not safe out here. It's wondrous, with treasures to satiate desires both subtle and gross. But it's not for the timid.
Unfortunately, that would be a level of respect that Voyager would throw out the airlock, overusing them, and even beginning to use them in novelty episodes, in comedy scenes.
If the Continuums told you once, they've told you 1,000 times. Don't provoke the Borg!
You will be assimilated.
Over my dead program.
Is there ever a time when I need to say disengage? Like, maybe your fiance is cheating on you and you need me to come in there and say disengage, and you know you don't have to be engaged to your fiance anymore who's cheating on you.
Star Trek has never been a stranger to death.
Stench.
That being said, in older Star Trek, death has generally been sterilized or never really shown as very visceral.
Your minds call it death.
He's gone.
That being said, modern Star Trek has a bit more action deaths than in previous iterations. But with the exception of some rather vividly pink scenes from Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country, I feel that Star Trek The Next Generation episode Conspiracy showed one of the most gruesome and visceral scenes from Star Trek at that time. The story of Conspiracy actually begins a few episodes earlier, in the first season episode Coming of Age. Admiral Quinn and Dexter Remick board the Enterprise. Something is wrong, but they won't elaborate as to what. The elderly flag officer and his aide regard the Enterprise and her crew with a great deal of suspicion.
I have reason to believe that there may be something very wrong on this ship. Mr. Remick, Starfleet is counting on you. You will find out what is wrong on this ship.
Yes, sir.
They fully investigate the ship, as well as interrogating the crew, and Admiral Quinn would ultimately go on to reveal that something is massively wrong within Starfleet.
Some of us at Starfleet Command became suspicious of certain problems in the Federation. Someone or something is trying to destroy the fabric of everything we've built up in the last 200 years.
He would offer Jean-Luc Picard a promotion to Admiral, as well as a new job as the head of Starfleet Academy, as Quinn needs people around him that he can trust in positions of power.
I need people I can trust in strong positions throughout the Federation. I want to promote you to Admiral, and I want you to take over as Commandant of Starfleet Academy.
Picard turns down the promotion.
Wish I could convince you to change your mind.
The story threads of this episode would later be picked up in the episode Conspiracy.
Something is beginning. Don't trust anyone. Remember that, Jean-Luc. Don't take anything for granted.
Odd fleet movements and personnel transfers throughout Starfleet lead Mr. Data to believe that someone is engaged in a clandestine attempt to control Federation sectors as a prelude to a possible invasion. Jean-Luc Picard's old friend Walker Keel would be killed in an accident that would completely destroy his ship. Picard decides that a trip to Earth and a visit to Starfleet headquarters is most definitely in order. Upon the Enterprise's return to Earth, Picard encounters truly bizarre scenes at headquarters as admirals, captains, as well as their security entourage begin consuming live insect larvae for dinner, culminating in shootouts, death, and ultimately the discovery that a form of telepathic queen alien parasite thing had been pulling at the strings in the background to destabilise the Federation. This queen inhabiting and possessing Remick, controlling parasites that had infected officers throughout the Federation as well as the admirals which Picard met with. Despite giving the statement that the aliens seek peaceful coexistence,
We mean you no harm. We seek peaceful coexistence.
Picard and Riker decide to bring this thing to an end in a very gung-ho and James T. Kirk-like manner. This episode would end with the revelation that the Queen inhabiting Remick had activated a homing beacon that could lure more of the parasite creatures to Earth.
Captain, I have attempted to trace the message Remick was sending. I believe it was aimed at an unexplored sector of our galaxy.
Any idea what the message was, Data?
I believe it was a beacon.
A beacon?
Yes, sir. A homing beacon, sent from Earth.
In Prime Star Trek canon, this storyline hasn't been followed up on, but in beta canon, it was followed up on in Star Trek Online, as well as in the podcast Star Trek Excelsior. Apparently this storyline was supposed to be a form of arc that would introduce the new threat, but this was all reworked, and would later become the Borg. They would be introduced in the Season 2 episode Q Who. At the time, Remick's death would perhaps have been one of the most gruesome scenes in Star Trek. So gruesome, in fact, that the BBC would cut it when they aired the episode.
We seek peaceful coexistence.
Captain's log, stardate 41780.2. How difficult after all these years of learning to respect life to be forced to destroy it. But there seems to be no alternative.
Aw, that's a shame. I was looking forward to seeing that. I absolutely loved this scene when I was a kid, and it's most definitely something that has stuck with me in my Trekkie mind ever since. Good night!